Hi, the quality of this video might be a little weak because I insisted on recording this deck profile with the assistance of my brother, I had called him on a remote call using Discord, so my computer was a little overtaxed while trying to record. Quality might not be great, but the deck profile is coming. You can hear everything fine, although the video is not fantastic. Apologies in advance if you're interested in the Infernoid Dino list. It's going to be in here. He has watched all the replays of all my matches from the tournament, so he'll have insight as to what kinds of questions to ask me, and I'm very bad at presenting my own deck profiles, so that's the reason we're doing it that way. We'll get into that in just a second. Again, apologies in advance. The video for the deck profile portion of this probably isn't going to be quite as smooth as I would have liked it to be. Alright, hello and welcome to the Legacy Crusaders YouTube channel. This is Benji, and today I'm going to be showing my top 4 Infernoid Dinosaur deck list from the Team APS ygopro Invitational, even though I think it was open entry. So Invitational, sure. There were 45 players in the tournament. Some deck lists were questionable, but after a few rounds of Swiss, I think anything that was really questionable or weird didn't really make it in. Top 16 were all good decks. I think 3 people who were supposed to be in top 16 didn't show up for day 2, so they were replaced with the people in 17th, 18th, and 19th, and I didn't play any of them, so I only played players from the top 16 for day 2. I went 5-1 day 1, and then I finished in top 4 from the top 16, losing to Dragon Maids, who eventually went on to win the event. The tournament was played on ygopro, but I'm actually going to show the physical deck list because I played the deck I actually own. So my brother's here with me via voice chat to ask questions about my deck because sometimes I forget to go over certain things about it. So I'm gonna name cards. He can't actually see what's going on right now, so when he hears cards, he can ask me questions about them if the ratios sound weird, because the average Infernoid player hates my deck list every single time I share it. But I continue to do well with it, so I think they're all crazy and that they need to explore other options. So I'm just going to share the deck list. So there are 3 copies of Infernoid Decatron, 1 copy of Permeus, 1 copy of Antra, and 1 copy of Harmodic.
Question: Why do you play Permeus? Most Infernoid lists don't really play it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people notice. An extra level 1 never hurts for resolving a good feast. Because your feast options are 2 Decatron Sajet, 1 Decatron Sites Moss, another one would be Decatron Harmodic Petrula, and the option that people haven't explored is Permeus Harmodic Petrula, which you do if your opponent's on a Mystic Mine deck and you want to feast on their turn. They're activating Mine via a Demise of the Land. You could actually summon 3 monsters that all have quick effects to tribute themselves off, so mine goes on board with no monsters. I mean, that's not really why I'm playing it. I wanted a few more names for Infernoids in the deck, and a few smaller ones are always helpful for resolving Feast well and having more options on effects to use. I did spin a few cards with Permeus, so it's not like it didn't come up.
Yeah.
Occasionally it's helpful for making Decatron level 2 for Synchro Summoning Omega using Decatron and Sajet or Decatron and Driver. Fair question. I'll continue.
Okay. Did Antra work out well too?
Antra,
those 2 aren't super common.
Antra isn't useful in the sense that there's no monster that needs to be outed by Antra anymore, so it doesn't come up too often. I mean, I've summoned it, but it had to be opened. I don't think I ever really sent it intentionally, other than it being the last Infernoid in the deck. It is the Permeus and the Antra are the most common side-out cards, and it's not because they're bad, okay. It's just I need to cut something, so I figured in a game 1 situation where I don't know what I need, that I'd rather have 2 more monsters in my deck, and I just chose these because they give me some variety of effects.
Okay.
Alright, 2 copies of Petrula, because back row removal on command is more important than any other effect you can possibly do in the Infernoid deck. And Petrula is level 4, so it gives me some options for rank 4 plays. There is a rank 4 I can actually make with Petrula and a dinosaur card, so I like that option.
Oh yeah, Dinosaur cards, okay.
Yeah. One Sajet for Void Feast, one Sights Moss for non-targeting removal, one Atondel for OTKs, 2 copies of Deviati, 2 copies of Inoku. I think that's standard for the most part. The only thing that might not be standard is some people might actually play the second or third copy of Sights Moss, and they actually usually cut down the main monster count a lot for Infernoid monsters. I'm actually playing 15, which is actually the reason the deck's at 60 cards, because I just don't want to see the Infernoids. I want to see everything else. And as much as I'd like to get to the Infernoid cards faster with a smaller deck, I wouldn't really want to play with a small monster lineup. So I have to make some sort of adjustment somewhere. Either I have to up the main deck count with cards that I'm willing to draw, which is what I did, or I have to play a smaller monster count, in which case, if my push fails, the game is over and I lose the game. So that's the Infernoid monster lineup. Next, for the Infernoid spells and traps, I got 3 Void Banishment, 3 Void Imagination. I main 2 copies of Void Feast, and 1 Void Purification.
You're gonna... First, let's talk about the 2 Void Feasts. Me and you have argued about this for a while. I've always thought of it as a 1 of or a 3 of. And I know what you're going to say, but enlighten the audience why you like 2.
It's not that I like 2. I find that there often in this current format, there are going to be matchups where you won't be able to resolve Imagination, so I'd rather search Void Feast. And a smart player will let you search Void Feast so they can ash the Void Feast, so you lose the Void Banishment. So the moment you get ashed on the first Void Feast, sometimes you just lose the game. So I like the option of having 2. That's one reason. Secondly, Double Feast is sometimes what you need to win the game, and the only way to open Double Feast is to play Double Feast. And if you open a feast and then search a feast, your opponent will wait and ash the first feast, and you can it's kind of like a way to play around ash, which could be done with a Call by the Grave, but Call by the Grave is not a searchable card, and Void Feast is a searchable card. I don't know if that makes sense.
Why don't you just run 3 Void Feasts then?
I'm still a hard-going second deck, so it's still not the game plan. So assuming I'm going second and that Void Imagination is live in the matchup, I'd rather bank for that. But sometimes I would still like to play the better cards I can draw. Again, I had to bump this up to 60 cards to not draw the monsters and stuff I don't want to see. So when it comes to what cards to play, the third Void Feast just didn't make the 60th card. I guess that's the fairest reason why it's not here. I would play it. I'd consider playing it. It might make it in over the Purification, I guess, if I deem Purification is not worth playing anymore. Which is also...
That's reasonable.
I know people don't play Void Purification. If they do, it's because it's the next least bad Infernoid card, a Void card.
Yeah. So, I can understand the 2 Void Feast instead of 3 then. But, because you want to see it some of the time, but not all the time. But, Purification. You're going to have to explain this card because most people don't know what it does.
All right. On your opponent's standby phase, you can add an Infernoid from your graveyard to your hand. And during your own standby phase, you can return a Infernoid from the Banish Zone to the graveyard. So you can technically recycle the entire deck of Infernoids. And I play Mystic Mine, so I'll lock my opponent under Mystic Mine, and if I'm not in a position to push, drawing this card's not bad, because it lets you make some degree of plays without committing too many monsters to the board, because if you Mystic Mine your opponent in an Infernoid deck, you can play around it really well by just tributing your monsters off over and over again. So I can summon Decatron, send something. At the start of their turn, I can tribute it and banish a card, and then use Purification to keep it in my hand, so I can just keep getting all the Infernoids into the graveyard slowly while I try and draw into a better play. Also, sometimes you'll push and your push will fail, but you'll still have Mystic Mine, so you can just slap down Mystic Mine and then just search Purification, and then you can spend the next few turns recovering resources from the Banish Zone with Purification, which is kind of cool. And it has a weird, it's actually an out for Red Reboot. If your opponent Red Reboots Void Feast, you can actually set Purification, then you've recouped the cost for the Void Feast, because even if they reboot it, you still lose the cost, so you get rebooted, you can set Purification, then you can flip it on the next turn and activate Void Feast. And it doesn't get sent to Graveyard if you control another Infernoid until it resolves, so you can flip it and then Chain Feast. So it's got a couple of features. I search it when mine's on board mostly. And if I open it, it's at least like a bluff on like a card for my opponent to spend like a Cosmic or a Twin Twister on. That's happened quite a few times.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm seeing that if you don't control an Infernoid monster, excuse me, if you control a monster that is not an Infernoid monster, it's sent straight to the grave. So my question is, if you're running dinosaurs in your deck too, how often did you have it and it was just a dead card, or it conflicted? Or you had dinosaurs and it was already face up.
Well,
like, basically, how often did it mess you up? You know.
Well, the game plan isn't really for it to stay on the board that long. If you do have it, it's really just there to kill a few turns while you're under Mystic Mine. So, and usually, if you have this card, you usually searched it off Void Feast. So, if you search it off Void Purification, Void Banishment. If you searched it off Vanishment while you couldn't make a play because your opponent's not making an extra deck monster or they're not putting enough monsters on the board to feast into to take advantage of the Mystic Mine, you just search this first and then you search the other cards. So it's there when you're purposely not keeping monsters on the board. Very rarely has it been on the board when I needed to like put another monster on the board that wasn't going to end the game anyway. So if I'm going to like summon Oviraptor while this card's on the board, either I'm taking control of the game or winning the game. So honestly, it never bothered me that it conflicts with other monsters.
Okay, fair enough.
That's the Void lineup. Dinosaur lineup. Triple Oviraptor. Triple Miscellaneosaurus. Double Baby Cerosaurus. Double Animadorn Archosaur. Double Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, a 1 Jurek Aeolo, and 3 Fossil Dig to search the missing dinosaur piece, and double Evolution Pill. Any questions on the Dino lineup?
Not really. They're all relatively standard. Maybe, you might play less babies than some people, no Giant Rex, but I understand it's like a hybrid build, so...
Yeah,
run the excess dinosaurs, really.
Yeah, the Dino combo works with any combination of Miscellaneosaurus Baby Cerosaurus or Archosaur Baby Cerosaurus. So Fossil Dig just gets you the piece you're missing, and if you open any two of them, you can do the combo. And Oviraptor can substitute for the Baby Cerosaurus or the Miscellaneosaurus, so you have so many ways to resolve that combo. And it's mostly just for going first, so it's not really the intention to go first and make the board, but it's like an option if I have to go first against a really bad matchup. And then I'm playing 2 Double Evolution Pill because the Archosaur can't activate if there's no pill in your deck. And I actually do play 2 Conductors, so just drawing one is not a bad thing. Sometimes just summoning Conductor can like be what you need to actually play the game, whether it be baiting out my opponent's cards. The Dinosaur Engine also is just good bait for making sure the Void cards go off, because with Called by the Grave at 1 and not searchable, like I don't even want to play it. I'd rather just bait the hand trap,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Alright, so that's the...
Speaking of hand traps, I feel like you didn't mention any. Is that next?
Yeah, that is next. I know you can't see the screen, but
okay.
We got triple Gamma and a Psychic Soldier riding into battle. That goes with it. 2 copies of Ash Blossom and 1 Effect Veiler.
Okay, I know that there's a specific reason you're running that Effect Veiler.
Yeah, it's in here for the Selene OTK, if people aren't familiar off of Halki Fibrax.
Okay, so you Halki Fibrax into Selene, bring back the Veiler into Access Code, and then go bananas.
Yeah, and you can get into it through the Dinosaurs or the Infernoids. That's sort of where part of the overlap in the deck is. Sometimes just a Miscellaneosaurus just sitting in your hand turns into an Aeolo, which combos with the Infernoids into the Fiber. Then you just need to summon a Tondel or something bigger to finish the game.
So that's pretty neat, yeah. Tondel, easy to come back and strong enough to end it.
Yeah. Full combo for the Infernoid OTK using Selene is Decatron plus a Revival spell, but I'm not really playing any Revival spells here. So that combo, while useful, it sometimes doesn't come up anymore. Now I'm playing some board breakers, and we're going second cards. I'm playing 2 Forbidden Chalice, 2 Forbidden Droplet. Droplet's useful at turning off my own Mystic Mine if I need to OTK my opponent. That's come up during the tournament, I believe. The Forbidden Chalice is just a less committal card, plus I only played cards I owned for the tournament, and I only owned 2 Droplets until, of course, yesterday. Now I have 3 Droplets. I don't know if I would cut the Chalice to play 3 Droplet. I'm actually kind of liking the ratio. But it's good for like stopping Dragoon or playing through a bunch of monsters at the same time. Also, these are also cards that deal with Calamities, even though they don't always deal with Calamities, because if they have Chuche on the board, you can't really play around it. But technically, any of these cards plus like Cosmic Cyclone, which I play 2 Cosmic Cyclone, can also out the 1 Calamities plus Chuche in the Virtual World deck. And I play 1 Feather Duster. And then there are 4 cards left in the main deck. Hey Jordan, you can't see what I'm putting on the board. You want to guess what the 4 cards that are left in the main deck are?
4 cards left in the main deck. I don't think you mentioned Skill Successor yet.
Oh no, that was from my first regional top. It's the ultimate card. 3 copies of Mystic Mine and 1 copy of Terraforming.
Oh, Mystic Mine and Terraforming, yeah.
Yeah, so
should have known.
So the Infernoid deck can play under Mystic Mine well, just because you can tribute off your cards. So they're in here because the Virtual World matchup plays the out for Mystic Mine in the Chuche. But if you can bait them into popping a card, they don't always have 2 banished cards left to pop the mine on the follow-up. So if you just play a card they have to pop or they feel like they should pop, like if I activate Banishment and try to bait them into popping Banishment, which they will sometimes, you could just stick a mine on the board and now they have to slowly try and use that the spell card, try and negate their own monsters turn after turn so they can get enough banished cards to pop it again. So it does come up sometimes, and if they don't get the trap card on the board, they don't play any other main deck outs for it. I think I won both of my Virtual World matchups with Mystic Mine in the top 16 and top 8. It's good against Drytron. They don't play.
Would be proud of that.
Yeah. Drytron doesn't actually play out for it. They don't play Herald of Greenlight because it doesn't stop Droplet or what do you call it? Droplet or Dark Ruler. Yeah, so they don't bother. So I just Mystic Mine them and try and draw outs. Other thing you can do, I'm trying to think of the matchups that it's bad against. Like it's bad against Eldritch, but you can actually grind them for a while because they're not going to kill you right away. You can grind out the Conquistadors and then you can stick mine onto the board and then it's just a passing game from there. Into the extra deck. The following cards are for the Dinosaur engine. It is 1 Linkaribo, 1 Secure Gardna, 1 Evolzar Dulka, and 1 Castel the Sky Blaster. Which I'm sure is the standout card.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and address that one?
Yeah, so I was between that, Logia or Tornado Dragon. I don't really feel like I need to negate summon. Popping a quick play card is probably more important. But I decided that every once in a while I'm going to have to make a rank 4 using Petrula, or it'd be nice to be able to do that. So I decided to go with Castel because it deals with the Floodgate by just shuffling it back into the deck. It also outs Megaclops. Not that people play it that often, but every once in a while someone does play Megaclops, and this is like the only card of my options that actually deals with it. So
okay.
It was a pretty cool idea from a duelist, Gavin, who helped me with the How to Dino video more recently. For the Infernoid part of the deck, this is more the Selene combo stuff. I have Hida, Fire, Charmer, Ablaze, which takes my opponent's ashes out of the graveyard to make a Crystron Hauki Fibrax, which usually summons Effect Veiler to go into Selene, and then revives the Veiler to go into Access Code with 5,300 attack points. And I play 1 copy of Crusadia Equimax, which has a couple of reasons for being in here. One is a standard like Infernoid OTK where you put 2 Infernoids in its pointers and then you attack your opponent with Equimax and tribute off Equimax. Alternatively, if I just can't get into Selene because it requires a spellcaster, it gives me a link 3 I can go into so that I can link up into Access Code and still get the 5,300 attack. So just a link 3. I mean, it could be a Nightmare Unicorn, but also like sometimes your opponent will nib you when you make the access code talker, and you'll still have the material. You'll still have enough link material to get into Equimax and 2 Infernoids somehow, which is crazy.
With all the reborning.
Yeah. Well, you might have like 1 Infernoid left, and then you can like activate double evolution pill and have like 1 pill, one conductor and 1 Infernoid in the Equimax pointer, and you just have to attack through the Nibiru. So it happens sometimes. Then for the Infernoid part of the extra deck, I'm playing 2 copies of Infernoid Tiara, which I play 2 because I can OTK my opponent under Void Vanishment if I draw 1 Imagination and 1 Void Vanishment, and I have to search the other Imagination. I
also think that, didn't you fuse twice against somebody in the same turn?
Did it come up in the tournament? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure one of the replays I saw it.
Yeah, you can fuse on them once, and
one of the early replays.
Maybe. I think I did. It was the Zoo guy who came in second. I'll get into the specifics on how that works in a moment. So I have 2 Tiaras and 2 copies of Nates to send to the graveyard with the Tiara, and 1 copy of Omega. And then I play 1 Gravity Controller to link off the Tiara if I'm not locked under Void Banishment, but if I am locked up under Void Banishment, the OTK using 2 Tiaras is you fuse while your opponent has an extra deck monster. And then you fill the graveyard, and then you activate the second Imagination to reduce Tiara's level to 1. You summon 2 Infernoids from grave, and 1 of them tributes off the Tiara, and now you don't control an extra deck monster, so you fuse again. And the Omega shuffles back 1 of the Nates, so you still get to do triple Nates pop, while also putting out more than 8k. So that's the extra deck. Any questions about the extra deck?
Oh, it makes sense.
All right.
I don't think there's anything obvious missing.
Okay. Then we'll get into the side deck, and that'll be it. 3 copies of Inspector.
Before you get into the side deck, it's a going second deck, I'm assuming, right? Because it doesn't seem like you really have an amazing go first board potential other than like Banishment.
The Vanishment and the 2 Dino play. So there is a going first play, but it's not the intended play.
Okay.
For siding, I side an Inspector Border for going first against Virtual World and Drytron because none of their cards can activate while Inspector Border is on the field. But they both play a main deck out for Inspector Border, but that doesn't mean they're going to have it.
Yeah.
The main deck out in the Virtual World matchup is the card that activates the spells from the deck. So it'll activate the negate spell, and then it'll banish the card that activates it to negate Inspector Border. And in the Drytron match, they have to get to Drytron Nova, which if they play the field spell, gives them 6 or 7 ways to get to it. So Drytron has like 7 ways to out it, and Virtual World has 3. So, I mean, it's not bad odds that they won't be able to deal with it. It's just an extra starter is the way I look at it. My goal is really to open the Dino combo or Void Banishment, but that's still just a limited number of starters, so this gives me more options. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
After the 3 Inspector Borders, I'm playing the 3rd Void Feast, or if I know I'm going first, or if I think it'll be important for the matchup, like they don't go into the extra deck that often, like a mostly Eldritch deck. 3 copies of Paleozoic Dynamiscus, because it can remove floodgates, and it can prevent a Virtual World card from sticking to the board so that they don't resolve in the hand. Because the targeted card still needs to exist on resolution of their effects in order for them to send the appropriate card to the graveyard. So if they don't exist, they can't send. Although I think I heard that the OCG recently had a official ruling that says if they put a monster on the board and they target a monster and you flip it face down, that they will still resolve. But if that ruling becomes official, all you have to do is banish the card when they normal summon it. You don't have to wait for them to activate. We wait for them to activate a card before we banish it with the purpose of having them waste the activation attempt in the hand. But, because they're all once per turn. I think I activated the trap card from the graveyard to summon itself once. Did you see that in the replay? I think it might have happened one time.
Which trap was it? I'm sorry.
The Dynamiscus from grave.
I don't know that you did in the tournament. Maybe once.
Yeah, I think it was just an extra body for fiber. I'm playing 3 copies of Pop-Up. I don't remember if this came up in the tournament. Did Pop-Up come up? It activates a field spell from deck and your opponent can't ash it if they control a field spell.
Don't believe that you did get it. I don't think so.
I know I sided it in a couple times. I think I played a Invoke Dogmatica deck once. I don't remember if it came up against them. But it comes in for like Invoke.
I think that he didn't draw the field spell, so I think there was a duel you had pop up in your hand, but they didn't play a field spell. So
yeah, that happens sometimes. It comes in for matchups where your opponent plays a field spell. So Invoked Numeron, it's decent against. So if they activate S0, you can chain this and at least have defense while they say you can't activate cards. It's like another way of playing around like a Calamities against a deck that actually uses a field spell. It's good against Frank Kids because they just play it as they play Frank Kids Place as a Rhoda for Prank Kids, but then suddenly they've created a weakness in their game plan. It also works against Drytron because their field spell search is their starter. So it has use. Honestly, I don't think this is the correct card to play. I should probably be playing Lightning Storm, but I only played cards I own, and I don't own Lightning Storms. But it's good like against Salad, a bunch of random decks that come up sometimes, ABC. I'm playing 3 copies of Demise of the Land, which activates if your opponent... Oh yeah, Pop-Up's also good against the Rocket deck, the Dragon Link deck, because they get Boot Sector Launch. If you go first against them, then you kind of catch them off guard with this. Like, people will play around Demise of the Land, but they can't play around Pop-Up. They don't really know Pop-Up is coming. This one's just a more rare random card. But Demise of the Land is just for decks where I think mine will be good, but I can't use Pop-Up.
That makes sense.
Sometimes I'll 50-50. But it really depends on what I can decide to cut for side purposes. The last 2 cards of the side deck. The 3rd copy of Forbidden Chalice for negating monster effects, and if it's useful in the matchup. And my 15th side deck card is a copy of a Psychic Soldier that rides into battle on Currents of Lightning. Thoughts on my 15th side deck card?
Purposes or what?
What was that?
Like side frames, but
so
I don't have many good thoughts on it.
No good thoughts.
Explain yourself.
All right, I'll explain why it's here. It's because VFD is so oppressive in the Virtual World matchup that I want the option to draw 2 gammas and activate both gammas and resolve both gammas. Because if you play 1 gamma and they activate Calamities and you activate gamma and then they chain Ash, you lose. Or if they chain Bell, you lose. Or if they have 2 Calamities.
Don't forget they could chain... Yeah, there you go. They could put their second Calamities.
You lose. Or if they chain... what's it called? Bamboozling Gossip Shadow. You lose. So the chance to potentially resolve two gammas is why it is in here at the same time, but it doesn't have to be. If the other cards in my matchup are just bad and I think gamma is the best card, I'll put it in anyway. And what happens is I'll just gamma them really early in the game, and then they don't expect another gamma later, and they'll run into it. Almost 100%. I don't think that came up in the tournament. I definitely drew both drivers in one game.
Oh yeah, and you won that game.
I did, because we both passed back and forth. It was a top 4 match. We both just set 4 and passed, but I Vanishment into Double Feast, I think, and I discarded the first driver, and I didn't want him to see the second driver. So I held it in my hand. I didn't need that to get tipped early in the tournament.
Yeah, I think that anytime you have any kind of stall game with your opponent, you tend to outpace them because the Mystic Mine against most decks is very, very suppressive, and your ability to search whatever void card you want.
They also don't play around it very well. Like, a lot of people get frustrated and play around mine badly. Like, really, the goal should be put one monster on the board.
Into other stuff.
Yeah, link down and then try and tribute set. Usually it's a good solid strategy, just because then I can't use. If I mine someone, I still have to play around it myself. I have to draw a second mine to set over the first one, or I have to resolve Imagination so that Tierra can send a test to pop it, or I have to like normal a Decatron and then pop the mine and then chain feast. Like there are ways to play around your own mine in the Infernoid deck, but they're not fun. They're not pleasant to have to do, and then they don't always work.
Yeah.
I don't think I tribute summon the driver in the tournament, but I think I thought about it once because I thought it'd be funny. But I decided not to go for laughs because I was sending you all these replays. Any questions, brother, that I might not have thought to address?
I think you summed up most of the stuff. Just were some cool plays that you should bring on the end of this video or something.
I mean,
I remember you OTK'd someone with the Equimax and 2 conductors who's pointing to while Mystic Mine's going because they didn't link the monsters off.
Yeah, through a Crusadia
really
Mech Knight Avermax, so they just took 10,000 damage to the face.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything really cool happened. Like, I mean, the coolest thing you can do with this deck is mine someone, activate Imagination, use Natest to pop mine, and then chain feast while they still can't activate cards because they have more monsters than you. So
yeah, I think you actually did that against a virtual world deck. You did something like that where they literally had everything. You activated everything while mine was still face up and played around it. But they had Gamma, Ash. Like I remember they had a ton of pain in the butt cards that usually would stop you in your tracks. And I think they even were at some point able to trigger something like calamities while you're doing this.
And I had Droplet and I had Chalice at the same time, along with another mine in case it went wrong.
Yeah, it was definitely a wacky interaction that went through nicely.
Yeah. So any hand you draw in this deck looks bad, but you'd be surprised what you can do with these hands. There's so many like strong power cards that don't care how bad the rest of your cards are; they're still productive. And you can open 5 like live cards, or you can open like 3 live cards and 2 dead cards. But the 2 dead cards are usually still not completely useless. Like opening a dinosaur means if I draw a pill next turn, I have a play. You know, if I draw an extra Infernoid, sometimes it's an extra summon. That's like an extra part of the OTK. Like it's not over just because you like have a weird hand. You can mine yourself. Like you could just normal Decatron, make Sightsmoss, and then activate mine and pass. Like it didn't come up in the tournament, but I can do that. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything. So I might include some replays. If I do, it'll probably pop up here. Otherwise, thanks for checking out this deck profile. Thank you, Jordan, for helping me talk through it. I'm really bad at doing my own deck profiles. Make sure you guys subscribe, check out the Twitch, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.